Well, welcome back. We are here for another segment of Let's Talk About It, but you're in for a treat. We brought Danté back. Well, technically, we didn't bring him back. It's the same conversation, but this is part two. So I hope that you are still here with open ears and an open heart as we explore Black history and Black literature. Continue. Carla, you actually had to step out to go pick up the kiddos, but you missed out on a great conversation.
I did.
But I know you're tuning in.
Yep.
So let's get into it.
Mom, I know you got to go, so you can bounce out. Yeah, go hit that car line up. Kēvin, Zach, if you want to move her chair out the way, and Kēvin, you slide in the middle, you'll get on that. You got that red chair, you got that red shirt on, you'll be on that Emmanuel Acho vibe, like sitting there in the middle of the backdrop and everything. So Kēvin, I wanna ask you the same question, but real quick, Danté, I want like this question isn't on here, but you began to talk about the miracle of almost the Black pushback against white oppression, and you talked about the link between the Black Lives Matter movement and the Civil Rights movement. And I know you are aware that like the most popular thing right now is to discredit the Black Lives Matter movement or organization, and so almost like you're always having to jump to the defense of the organization, even for using the phrase. And I want to hear your perspective on that, on the organization, on the phrase, and why you unashamedly are confident, no matter the circumstance.
Yeah, bro. Great question. I think for me, it starts on a personal level. As a Black person in this country, like, who is fighting for our lives? And whoever is fighting for our lives, that person is loving. That organization is loving. That group is being neighbors. Jesus asked, who is the neighbor in the Good Samaritan text? It wasn't a priest or the Levite, but it was the Samaritan, the one who stopped, the one who showed compassion. And so for me, as a kind of wannabe theologian or whatnot, a theologian in training, theologically speaking, any movement, that is working for lives and futures, I would say it's a movement of God. It's a movement that God desires. It's a movement that God wants. As we look at John 10:10, Jesus said, I've come to have life, that they might have life and life more abundantly. This is foundational. It is abundant life beyond the stories that's offered. And so when I look at, Black Lives Matter, I read Black Lives Matter, as a Black person. I'm not parsing the organization, whether, I agree with this or do I agree with that. That just, is impractical or whatnot, and very irrelevant. Where I'm situated, for me, the question is, how can I come alongside this movement in my particularity and join this struggle for our futures and the future of my son and our children? And so, historically, I would say that Black Lives Matter is a part of the tradition, like I said earlier. Politically, it is a movement that's continuing once again, like other movements in the past, to put the question of Black life in front of our political discourse. And theologically, it is the public expression of the theological truth that Black lives matter to God. And so, as I read the movement, if it can be called that, I start there. And I say, for me, I have no issue with it. There's this talk whether, it's the new civil rights movement or what. I would say that the old civil rights movement never left. So the whole premise is the question, is faulty. But then, even having a conversation regarding Black Lives Matter is really the question of, is this a movement that white people can agree with? And for me, I'm not into answering that question, nor giving that question time of day. I'm saying this movement is a part of a long history of struggle for our freedom and for our future and for our life and for our love. And so for me, that's kind of where I start and where I end on that question.
That's good. And I think that's a brilliant and powerful answer. Before kind of we bring this conversation to a close and get to the practicals of like literary pieces, Kēvin, I want to ask you, how does your understanding, interpretation, and study of Black history shape your outlook today and your outlook on the civil rights movement?
First, I'd start by saying that growing up throughout grade school and high school, I hated history, and this conversation is making me question why. Like, why did I hate history? I naturally love math, and I always assumed that people just cater towards certain subjects in school more than others. But this conversation is making me question, why did I not like history growing up? Because as I'm unraveling our society and considering what do I see in the forefront, what do I rarely see, which is, Black voices, black literature, Black theologians in church or in school itself, Black authors. As I'm thinking about all of that, I can't help but try to put it in terms of, pop culture and how, I know that I went to see Black Panther 3 times in theaters because I loved the movie, it was exciting, but I think Black people in general celebrated the reality that this was a predominantly Black cast that was excellent. It was excellent, and that's not regularly depicted in Hollywood, where if you, I also consider from the musical stance where it's like, I remember I went to 4 proms, that's another story of why I went to 4 proms, but in my final prom, I didn't have any fun because all of the music that was played was Kesha, and I don't like her music at all. And so as I'm thinking about that, I'm tying it into history and this discussion because I'm thinking about how, the music that I did not like at that prom, it overwhelms my view of prom itself, where the people that I was with, the food, everything else is watered down because the taste in music didn't fit to my liking, but also because it wasn't just like, I don't like the sound. It was more so like my sound, my preference, my enjoyment of music was not represented in what was playing. And so considering that on a larger scale was like, if we look at pop culture in Hollywood, but in this conversation here in history with authors and literature and whatnot, if we're not represented in bookstores, in school, in the church, if people who look like me and can identify with some of my experiences and my upbringing are not being represented, then it makes it hard for me to appreciate history. But then also, and that's because I'm only learning about history through the lens of the majority. But as a minority, it's like, wait a second. What you guys experienced, coming into America, Christopher Columbus, what you experienced is not what the Native Americans experienced. What you experienced through Reconstruction is not what my people experienced. And what you're experiencing today is not what I experienced. So now I'm kind of questioning, it kind of makes sense that I didn't like history because I perhaps even as a young kid had this understanding that it wasn't like that. Or I don't reap the benefits of these historical moments. I'm not saying, I can't say that as a one generic statement, but because clearly, we have progressed from what things used to be or how things used to be, but we're not fully there yet. And so therefore,
I can't look and just celebrate and say, man, we've come a long way. I can take my hat off. I can breathe easy. I don't have to worry about my kids. I don't have to worry about, going outside for a jog myself, because we've blown past that. Because as we see this year with the Ahmaud Arbery's case, we haven't. And so I think that realizing that in school there aren't, I'll just say, accurate depictions of Black history, and then also in the church that Black theologians, their voices are not widely embraced and broadcasted. I think it makes me feel as though it makes me question, like, okay, does this mean that there aren't Black voices out there? Or does this mean that we view, as a society, we view Black voices as less important or less worthy of listening to? Or is all Black theology skewed in some way that's heretical and therefore it's not worth listening to? And those questions come to mind where it's like, well, in either answer, and whatever answer you may try to portray there, it's like, okay, it's an issue. There's an issue. There is no answer that can be given to that question that would make me go back and say, you know what, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess you're right. Because there are Black theologians out there. There are Black authors and writers who, throughout the span of time, have written and contributed to the Christian faith in a way that's worth giving ear to. And if we're not broadcasting it and saying, check this out, we support this. But I know Caleb and I have had a conversation about this as he's in seminary, where most of his classes, anytime that a Black theologian has been mentioned, it's been to pick apart their theology. It's like, man, what is that saying to America? What is that saying to young theologians, young people in the faith? What is that saying to churches? What is that saying to the non-believing public? Saying, hey, it puts up this front that, yes, Christianity is white man's religion, but the historical truth shows, no, that's not. That's not right. It's incorrect. And so, man, like my brain is really going all over the place. But in general, it does, I'm pushed and challenged more this year than ever to really dig deep and read more, do more research, and get out of my comfort zone of saying I like math, and say, no, read more about your history, read more about your ancestors, but also read understanding that this isn't wide public knowledge, but the truth needs to be presented. And also, as you learn more, it shifts the way that you go about our situation here today, because you realize, like Danté said, this isn't anything new. You know what? I love how I was listening to, and I think this goes into the last question, but I was listening to a podcast who put me onto James W.C. Pennington, who essentially presented the question saying, what does your Bible say about slavery? That's a general question that hopefully any Christian can give an accurate answer and correctly portray the heart of God. But he's asking that question essentially saying, listen, if your God that you believe in is saying that slavery is okay, that the value of life is not even something to consider, I don't want any part of that. And if that question is presented, this James Pennington, I'm reading more about him, but I'm realizing that he's asking that question but providing answers to that question himself. He's proposing it in a challenging way, but saying, listen, this is the Christian faith that I'm holding to, as I'm understanding it. If I'm wrong, then I'm sorry. But as I'm understanding right now, this is a brother who is saying, a little spiritual brother, but yes, a Black brother, saying, this is a question I pose to you all. Your answer to this is either incorrectly portraying the heart of God or correctly portraying the heart of God. But if you are correctly portraying the heart of God, then let's band in this together. And that's how it should affect our movement today, where we're saying, listen, if we agree what the heart of God says about human life, about dignity, about Black life, about brown life, whatever issue we're focusing on, then that means that we need to band together and pursue this. We need to walk it out. And like Danté's saying, if there is an organization or a party or a whatever that is saying, no, I'm on board with this, then in any realm, we can always pick apart something that's going to say, nah, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't agree with that. People who align with the Republican Party will also look at the president and say, I can't jive with all the things that he says and does. And that's on both sides. That happened with Obama in his presidency, where it's like, you can always point out something, but for some reason, that's the gap that I don't quite understand, is why when it comes to Black Lives Matter as the organization, that one gets the strongest thumbs down, like, oh, I can't even jive with the sentiment or the movement because of all of the other things that the organization stands for. But I can totally not even consider the principle when it comes to my party. Or I can totally not even consider the principle when it comes to the campaign. I'll stop there. But I think you want me to pose the last question?
Yeah, I wanted to say first off, Kēvin, I love you. You phrased the last question. Basically, let's break it down into one thing, kind of the importance, and then like who it is. You got it.
I love you too, Caleb. So Danté, the last question here, because you've already hit on the importance of studying Black literature and listening to Black voices, but can you, if you want to say more on that, and wrapping it into just practically providing a couple of Black authors or Black voices that are worth essentially saying, hey, once you finish up this video, go check these out. Go check these guys, these ladies out. What you got for us?
Yeah, so I would say, make a practice of reading Black literature. Sometimes, right now, I think even getting an audiobook is, a worthy investment. You don't have to, sit down to necessarily read. Just grab an audiobook whenever you chilling, driving, turn on the audiobook. When you're showering, turn on the audiobook. When you're just cooking or something, turn on the audiobook. And I would say make a practice of, engaging with our literature. In any way you can. You don't have to do anything superhero, but it's an aspect of love, or whatnot. So who would I tell you to read though? I'll name a few. I'll just put them in categories though. So I'll first say one old essayist and one new one. So anything you read, so I love essays or whatnot. Anything you can read by James Baldwin, that is standard. Hands down, I don't know if this is even a video recording, but The Fire Next Time by Baldwin is a standard. It's just a brilliant, beautiful book. Another essayist today that I love is Kiese Laymon, who wrote Kiese Laymon. He wrote the book Heaven, an American memoir. So that is a great book. Theological books, I would say read James Cone. You can't go wrong with reading James Cone. Or one of my favorite writers today, Shawn Copeland. So Shawn Copeland is a brilliant theologian. Shawn Copeland. Fiction, of course, read Toni Morrison. You can't go wrong with reading Toni Morrison. But also, someone from today, Jasmine Ward. Definitely read Jasmine Ward. And so those probably would be my standards of kind of starting. And then kind of look up lists regarding Black classic literature, just classics in Black history. And just start there. And if you can make it through the classics, just make it through primary sources, which is reading literature that we, have put into the world, not what somebody else has said, then that's a good starting point. And I think it can be a powerful, formative spiritual discipline, but also a powerful, formative political discipline for the life that we want to accomplish today. So
that's great. like I said early on in this episode, Danté really challenged me to read some new people, and James Baldwin was one of those. He has his literature has changed my life, and it has given me fresh perspectives on past events and fresh perspectives on modern things. And other people, Ta-Nehisi Coates. His if you want to talk about some crazy good essays, his stuff is insane and really, really good. And another book a few books I just finished, Esau McCauley. He wrote a book called Reading While Black that is phenomenal. And then also Justin Giboney is another guy. He wrote a book on the Christian Guide to Public and Civic Engagement, and it's phenomenal. And so, Kēvin, I'm gonna turn it over to you, and I'm gonna let you close us out. You go ahead and give us your pieces of literature and your people, and then you do the Let's Talk About It sign off.
Yeah, I love that, man. I'm newer to this than I would like to admit, but I say that also in humility, realizing that no one wants to admit that. And I think sometimes people can be like, I don't know where to start, or I haven't started yet, and I'm just not going to start. But nah, start. So yes, in addition to the individuals that you guys have mentioned, I just finished Reading While Black by Esau McCauley as well, and that really kicked me into an even higher gear. I like how Danté mentioned just audio books, whatever. I would also throw in podcasts there, because that's another one that's really kicking me in high gears. KB, the Christian rapper KB, and Danté's podcast. I thought you were telling me something different. I'm sorry, Zach. I'm sorry if this is messing up the edit. Anyway, KB and a good friend of his, Amin Hudson, they have a podcast called Southside Rabbi, which is kind of like Let's Talk About It, where they're just trying to provide a biblical worldview on today's topics and issues within society. And on there, they've thrown out names that I plan on getting into, where James W.C. Pennington is one of them. Gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. Lemuel Haynes, and Plato is one, where essentially just the overview that I've done is realizing, man, these are people who are talking about Black life from various points in history, through their essays, through their newspaper writings, and and the books that they provided, where it's worth listening to. And again, I know that some people might even look at these recommendations and say, but wait, they're not all Christian. And I would generally say that's okay. Because again, the goal here in trying to love is saying, I care to listen and hear about the Black experience here today, but also in the past, because that's going to inform what I do today and going forward into our future. And so I think it all impacts your ability to love well by hearing, yes, what a Christian, because that's very important, hearing a Christian, someone with the Holy Spirit within them saying, I'm seeking to love regardless of what happens to me. But it's crucially important for a non-Christian to hear a non-Christian's heart and saying, man, I don't have that spirit in me, and I want to rage. I want to get revenge, but still hear their heart and their experience as well. So I think it's worth it. And I would challenge us all to that. So I hope that y'all have enjoyed this video. We love y'all, and we're continuing to work through this with you guys. It's no easy battle. It's an uphill climb. But as we seek to love, to understand, and not just to be understood, we will go forward in being quicker to listen, slower to speak, but quick to love. We got to put on love first. That's what God calls us to. So let's do that together, pursuing unity as He desires. Love y'all. We'll see y'all next week on Let's Talk About It.